In the quiet of a late summer evening in 2023, I stood at the edge of my backyard in Maplewood Grove, a sleepy suburban pocket of Oregon where every lawn was clipped to perfection and every mailbox stood in obedient uniformity. The air was thick with the scent of fresh-cut grass and something heavier dread, maybe, or the weight of a neighborhood held hostage by its own rules. My name is Daniel Harper, and this is the story of how I opened a gate and let a bear decide the fate of a woman who thought she could break my family. Her name was Margaret Voss, and she didn't just run the HOA, she owned it, like a queen clutching a scepter made of bylaws and fear. She came into my home, put her hands on my son, and left crawling, bloodied, begging for mercy. Want to know what happened in between? Stay with me. This isn't just a story, it's a reckoning. Maplewood Grove was the kind of place that promised peace on every welcome mat but delivered paranoia instead. Behind the matching shutters and manicured hedges, neighbors lived in quiet terror of a single phone call that could unravel their week. Margaret Voss was the source of that fear. She wasn't just the HOA president. She was the neighborhood's judge and jury, her clipboard a gavel that could crush your peace with a single citation. People whispered she could recite HOA codes faster than her own kids' names. No one laughed about it anymore. When my son, Lucas, and I moved here after my wife's death, I thought I'd left conflict behind. I chose a house at the end of a dead-end street, no noise, no fuss, just us and Samson, our 900-pound grizzly bear. I know what you're thinking, a bear? But Samson wasn't wild. Rescued from a Montana sanctuary, he was licensed, trained, and gentle as a summer breeze. A therapy animal, he once calmed a firefighter mid-panic attack just by sitting close. To me, he was family. To Margaret, he was a threat she couldn't control. Trouble started small, like it always does. A neon yellow note on my trash can, violation bin visible from street, section 3.1.7. Lucas had left it out for 10 minutes. Then came a warning for irregular lawn edging, followed by a citation for excessive noise when Samson sneezed near an open window. It was laughable, but it wasn't random. Margaret was circling, her eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses, her steps deliberate as she passed my house each morning. I caught her once, crouched by my fence, filming Samson through the slats. When I called her out, she stood, dusted her khakis, and said, "Residents have a right to document hazards." Hazards? Samson hadn't left his enclosure since we arrived. He slept, he snored, he dreamed bear dreams. But Margaret didn't care about facts. She cared about power. Lucas came to me one evening, his face pale. She'd cornered him by the community mailbox, asking if he felt safe living with that beast. When he said yes, she leaned in, her voice a hiss. "You'll see what happens when you don't follow rules." That was the moment I knew she wasn't just a nuisance. She was a predator, and her prey was my family. Citations started appearing under my door at night, one even wedged into the gate's lock. This wasn't enforcement, it was obsession. I felt it in my bones. Margaret wasn't going to stop at paper. She was coming for us, and when she did, she'd regret every step. It was a sweltering Tuesday in August, the kind of heat that made the air shimmer and your skin crawl with unease. I was hosing down my truck in the backyard, music humming through my earbuds, mind drifting. Lucas was in the garage, tinkering with his skateboard, the clatter of wheels a familiar comfort. Samson dozed in his reinforced enclosure, his snores like distant thunder. Then I saw the back door to the house, wide open. My stomach dropped. Lucas wouldn't leave it like that. I ripped out my earbuds and moved closer, catching a flicker of movement inside. A shadow, sharp and purposeful. Margaret. She'd let herself in. No knock, no call, just strode through my home like she owned it, clipboard in hand, her silhouette cutting through the dim light. I shouted, "Margaret, get out." She didn't pause. She marched straight for the garage door and vanished inside. Rage hit me like a freight train. I dropped the hose and sprinted across the yard, my pulse hammering in my throat. Lucas was in there, alone, defenseless. Margaret had been escalating for weeks, her citations a prelude to something darker. Now she was in my house, with my son. I tore through the kitchen, hitting the garage stairs at a dead run. Halfway down, a crash shattered the air, followed by Lucas's voice, high and desperate. "Stop, please." I rounded the corner, and the world stopped. Margaret loomed over my son, who was crumpled on the concrete floor, arms shielding his head, blood streaking his cheek. In her hand, her clipboard, its edge smeared red. She looked up, eyes blazing, and spat. This is what happens when you harbor danger. But she didn't know the danger she'd just unleashed. I charged down the remaining steps, my boots slamming against the wood. Lucas was trembling, blood dripping from his nose, his arm scraped raw. Margaret stood tall, clutching her clipboard like a shield. He was defiant, she said, her voice cold. I asked about the bear, and he got hostile. Section 12.4 residents must cooperate with HOA inquiries. My vision tunneled. Words burned in my throat, but I didn't trust myself to speak. Instead, I moved past her, my shoulder brushing hers hard enough to make her stumble. I reached the control panel on the far wall, hidden behind a stack of boxes, and slammed my fist against the emergency release. A heavy clunk echoed through the garage. Behind a steel gate, Samson stirred. His low growl rumbled through the air like a storm rolling in. Margaret's eyes widened, her clipboard slipping an inch. You want danger, Margaret? I said, my voice ablade. You just found it. Samson stepped forward, his massive frame filling the space, his breath clouding in the cool air. He didn't charge or roar, didn't need to. His presence was enough, each paw hitting the floor like a verdict. Margaret screamed, tripping over her own feet and crashing into a metal shelf. Tools and cans clattered around her as she scrambled backward, her glasses askew, her hands shaking. Call it off, she shrieked. I knelt beside Lucas, pulling him into my arms, his body trembling against mine. I looked at Margaret, her blouse torn, her hair wild, one shoe gone. You broke into my home, I said, my voice steady but burning. You hurt my son. Now you face what you called a monster. Samson advanced, slow and deliberate, his eyes locked on her. Margaret clawed at the floor, slipping in a puddle from an overturned bucket. This is your fault, she screamed. That animal's a threat to everyone. I stood, passing Lucas my phone. Call 911, I told him. He nodded, crawling to the corner, his fingers shaking as he dialed. I turned back to Margaret. Samson was 3 feet away now, his head low, nostrils flaring. She whimpered, curling into herself. Please, I didn't mean it, she sobbed. I stepped closer, my voice a low growl. You meant every hit, every threat, every lie. You thought your rules gave you power. Out here, power is what you answer to. She tried to stand, slipped, and collapsed again, her breath ragged. You'll rot in jail for this, she hissed. I grabbed her blouse, yanked her up, and pinned her against the wall. The clipboard fell with a crack. I'm not the one who hit a child, I said, and drove my fist into her stomach. She doubled over, gasping. Another punch caught her jaw, blood spraying across the concrete. She crumpled, sobbing, broken. I knelt beside her, gripping her neck, forcing her face into the filthy water on the floor. This is where you belong, I said. Samson snorted, his shadow looming over us. Margaret didn't move. She was done. Sirens wailed in the distance. I helped Lucas to his feet, his eyes wide but steady. Margaret stayed down, her blouse soaked with blood and grime, muttering nonsense about her rights. The police arrived, their boots heavy on the stairs. I raised my hands calmly. I'm Daniel Harper, I said. That's my son, Lucas. He's hurt. And that woman broke into my home and attacked him. Margaret wailed, he set a bear on me. I'm the HOA president. Then, in a final act of desperation, she pulled a bag of raw meat from her purse and flung it toward Samson's enclosure. He's feeding it blood, she screamed. The officers froze. I didn't. I pulled a USB drive from a drawer and handed it to the younger cop. Security footage, I said. Shows her breaking in, hitting my son, planting that meat, and setting up a camera to frame me. The older officer picked up the meat with gloved hands. Still cold, he muttered. Margaret's face collapsed. That's not mine, she stammered. It's on video, I said. Every second. The officers exchanged a look. One escorted Lucas upstairs for medical attention. The other turned to Margaret. Ma'am, you're coming with us. She shrieked, but her power was gone. They led her out, her heels dragging, her authority reduced to nothing. 3 weeks later, Margaret Voss faced a judge in a small courtroom that smelled of stale coffee and regret. She sat primly, her bruises faded, her lawyer a loud man in a cheap suit who thought volume equaled victory. My client was assaulted by a man keeping a dangerous animal, he bellowed. My lawyer, Nathan Cole, Your Honor, the footage shows the plaintiff breaking into my client's home, assaulting his son, and planting evidence. The screen lit up, and the room fell silent. Margaret's every move played out her trespass, her violence, her lies. The judge watched without expression, then reviewed Sampson's permits and certifications. The defendant is in full compliance, he said. The plaintiff's actions constitute assault and misconduct. Her suit is dismissed, and she is barred from any HOA leadership role for 10 years. Margaret sat frozen, her world unraveling. She stormed out, avoiding my eyes, her pride shattered. Days later, she vanished from Maplewood Grove. Her house sat empty, her garden wild, her HOA plaque tossed in a shed. The neighborhood changed without her. Porch lights glowed, Halloween decorations appeared early, and kids reclaimed the streets. Lucas laughed again, his bruises fading, his spirit healing. One neighbor, Mr. Rivera, painted his shutters a defiant red. Another left a note in our mailbox, a sketch of Sampson with a scrawled, "Thank you." The HOA handbook gathered dust, replaced by a new board that valued people over rules. Then came a letter, no sender, just a torn HOA newsletter and a note. She did this to me in '09. I had a rescue wolf. She got it taken, fined me, and I stayed quiet. Not anymore. Thank you. TM. I realized Margaret's reign had broken more than just us. I built a shaded retreat for Sampson, called Bear's Haven, where kids now visit, leaving fruit and drawings. A reporter asked me what changed in Maplewood Grove. I looked at Lucas, skateboarding in the driveway, and Sampson, dozing in the sun. People thought quiet meant weak, I said. But quiet just means you're waiting for the right moment to fight back. Margaret's gone. Her clipboard snapped in two, her name erased. Lucas is stronger, Sampson still snores, and I'm still here, guarding my peace. But peace has teeth, and I learned it the hard way. Now I want to hear from you. Would you have opened that gate, let the bear decide, or held back? Was I right to fight fire with fire, or did I go too far? Drop a yes in the comments if you'd have unleashed hell, or no, if you'd have chosen another path. And tell me, hey, have you ever faced someone like Margaret? Someone who thought they could control you with fear? What did you do? Hit that like button if this story shook you, and subscribe for more tales of standing tall when the world tries to break you. Let's keep this fire burning.